kilometres. And Paul, not too many riders left up front here from the 191 that set out this morning from Liège.
Strange tactics as well by Laurent
Flèche-Wallonne. Well, he's going now for 3 wins in a row.
The champion of Russia at the back there, Sergei Ivanov, riding for the TVM squad, and there's no major move at the front of the main field to try and chase down that attack by Laurent Jalabert. A surprise attack by Jalabert to go out so far from the end of the race like this, a mistake that I feel he's made in the past when he attacked around about 100 kilometres to go. Jalabert, readying himself for what is going to be a long, hard ride if he's going to stay in front, was quite open with his views on the race this morning. You have to be at the front of the race and have good legs. For the moment, I've got pretty good legs, and I hope to be at the front when I get to the Côte de la Redoute.
Well, he's got a good chance now, Paul, because he is clear, but we're only talking of seconds here as he leads with Garzelli. And the main field is getting bigger all of the time as riders are getting back into that group just behind. We're heading up towards the Côte de Rosier, which will take us to the 193rd kilometre of the day. There are 10 climbs which make this race famous in the Belgian Ardennes, and all but one of them are on the way back from the turn at Bastogne.
Stefano Garzelli wearing number 91, a great teammate for Marco Pantani, the winner last year, a surprise winner at the time of the Tour of Switzerland, but certainly a man who the Italians will be looking to in the future to be present when it comes to the Tour of Italy. A very good rider, and I feel a good ally for Laurent Jalabert to have if he hopes to stay clear to his objective of being at the front of the race when he gets to the Côte de la Redoute.
Here's the main field. We're not going back very far, about 40 seconds to this group at the moment, at the most. And they still look as though they're quite unconcerned by the attack. Well, that was a wrong statement, because look at this now. Somebody's launched an attack and Michele Bartelli's gone.
Mappé very keen to try and split the race up here. That looked very much to me like Andrea Noe, who was leaping out of the group there, trying to split it apart. Michele Bartelli is in this group at the moment and moving to the front once more. The Lampre riders trying to stir it up and pull the attack back of Laurent Jalabert. I really feel, Phil, that is a bit of a crazy attack to go out with more than 50 miles left to go to the finish. And a bit of discussion there, Michele Bartelli and his right-hand man, Paolo Bettini, discussing just exactly where they are in the Belgian countryside.
That's true, and in fact, Bartelli, looking at a little map he's got, he actually loves racing in Belgium. He's a man of the classics. He's trying to emulate Moreno Argentin today by winning this race again. And in fact, if he does, he will carry off the Ardennes weekend, as they call it, although it's no longer a weekend because of the way he ran out the winner of the Flèche-Wallonne, which was, in fact, 4 days ago.
Pretty big group here. Andre Schmeel is in this group, but you can see the Mappé riders taking a keen interest now on the position of Michele Bartelli in the group. That was Andrea Noe dropping back there. This looks very much like Axel Merckx on the front, another of the big transfers this year. This is Axel Merckx, whose father in fact is commentating for the Belgian television not too far away from us at the moment, and he'd be very happy to see his son at the head of action. In fact, Axel rode a very good Liège-Bastogne-Liège a couple of years ago, taking 7th place.
Well, I should imagine Dad Eddie's getting pretty excited because his son's developing into being quite a good bike rider now. One or two riders trying to catch the wheels here. Number 96 was Falconi. And this is an interesting little group they're getting going now, because if they can react like this, then we're going to see the other guy, the two leaders up front, come back into the fold.
Now, this man we haven't seen a lot of just recently, number 86, that's Cédric Vasseur, a former yellow jersey holder in the Tour de France, and he has managed to get himself across to this group.
Well, now there's a lot more urgency now, because the peloton has grown considerably with the groups coming back here since they came through Stavelot. So that's a big bunch, Paul, and it'll take some breaking up, but there's still what? There's still 5 of the climbs to come.
And I feel the most difficult one towards the end is the Côte de la Redoute, and that's where you'll find the main field, which is here, chasing after Jalabert and Garzelli, will absolutely explode. The group, which they're calling the Group Merckx at the moment, is 48 seconds behind the two leaders, and Jalabert is hoping to try and build up a bigger advantage to that, because as long as he doesn't go over the minute, he's always going to be very much in sight of the main field.
Well, we're not very far away now from the climb of the Côte de Rosier. And we'll see then just how serious those two riders are up front. The Rabobank rider at the back here is Bert Zberg. And Cedric Vasseur is also there. Number 24 is Pascal Chanter of the Casino team. And number 5 here is Axel Merckx himself. I think he's forced this split, but of course he's looking around the group to see if Bartoli's joined, and he hasn't.
Well, 1 or 2 riders coming across to this group. I caught a sight there of Oscar Kamenzin, but Axel wants to try and split it even further. He wants to try and make it a difficult race. He wants to toughen it up for Team Mapei. Today you can see, in fact, Phil, that the whole of the main field has come up there, so Axel has gone to the front to try and split another group off. But he will have responsibilities to Team Mapei today. He won't be able to ride for the account of Axel Merckx, because Michele Bartoli, let's not forget, has won this race for the last 2 years and will be looking for the hat-trick.
Nice to see a show of form there by the world champion Oscar Kamenzin. There's a Rabobank ride, I think it was Zeberg, shot through the inside of our camera, and there he is settling back in now, and it is in fact Beat Zeberg who's gone through. We've just gone past Jakska there, the Telecom rider, so there's only 2 riders in front now as we head up towards the Rossier climb. And we'll catch a glimpse of the 2 leaders very shortly. But look at this turn of speed from Zeberg. He's picked up Cedric Vasseur on his wheel.
Cedric Vasseur, always the master at long breakaways. He hasn't really shown much form since the early part of this season. He's obviously, like most of the French riders, just trying to base his season around the Tour de France. The Tour de France has become so important for the French riders, and now they're on the foot of the Côte de Rosier, 13% at its highest part and 4 kilometers in length.
And it shoots up to 220 metres, so you can imagine it is a little bit of a nasty one. And we've got 4 riders now trying to get themselves into a chase group. And I'm just wondering how Laurent Jalabert and Gazzelli are coping with this climb. We'll have to wait until the cameras get up there to have a look. Oh, here we go. The sun is out. Don't be fooled by the sun. It's not very hot at all today. In fact, it's rather an unfortunate day, but it's certainly a lot better than it was for the Flèche Wallonne.
Axel Merckx has taken himself across, and this is Figueras at the back. He's got a problem. You can see there, in fact, the man who's actually helping him out there is Henny Kuiper. Henny Kuiper, a former winner of some of the best classics around, Paris-Roubaix, Tour of Lombardy. He just happened to be standing at the side of the road when that incident happened.
Well, he did well. He got himself a free top as well, though he's giving it back. That's all right then. So Figueras, under-23 champion a couple of years ago, now developing as a full professional, and trying to get back on terms here too is the big Seiko rider, and this is Roberto Petito.
Well, I suppose Henny got a bit of a shock there. In fact, he would normally be helping a rider from Rabobank, but it's a gear problem there. It looks as if they were jumping around, and this can happen here in Liège-Bastogne-Liège because you use nearly every gear in the cluster in a race like this. On the descents, you're using the big ring, and a bit of Italian temperament coming in there. Unfortunately, there's a mechanic on hand to help out.
Now back up to the front, and Jalabert has got himself to set the pace now. The gloves have come off too from Garzelli, so the pace and the temperature warming up just that little bit. An awful long way still to go, of course. We're around about 195 kilometres covered now of the 264, so there's still best part of 70 kilometres left to ride.
Jalabert looking very comfortable. He obviously goes out on these long attacks in a race like Liège-Bastogne-Liège just hoping there's going to be a counter-attack from behind, because I don't think anybody in this day and age of the modern era of professional cycling can hope to stay in the front for 80 kilometres in a race like Liège-Bastogne-Liège. You have to go back to performances like Bernard Hinault many years ago, who went on to win this race by 10 minutes, and in modern cycling that just doesn't happen.
Well, this is a long climb as we climb the Côte de Rosier, 4 kilometres, and that group behind has grown a little bit now. It was just a couple. It's now 2, 4, 6, 8 riders, and there's a few more coming across the gap as well.
Still an awful long way to go, and the sting in Liège-Bastogne-Liège certainly very much in the tail nowadays, ever since the introduction of that penultimate climb of the day, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, which really is a swine of a climb, climbing up right out away from the city of Liège. When you think you've come into the finish, you take a left-hand turn and do an extra little loop to go and find this climb through what they call Little Italy.
Well, there's a time check come up there. If only we could find out what it was, but it looks as though, in fact, Garzelli here is having a job holding on to Laurent Jalabert. His face is telling us he's really suffering here. Jalabert, well, he's absolutely storming on this climb at the moment.
These are the kind of climbs Jalabert really likes. He's a little bit in difficulty. In fact, there is the moment when Jalabert gets out of the saddle, accelerates, and Garzelli has been popped off the wheel.
Well, I can't see the sense in that, Paul, because unless Jalabert is anticipating the best part of a 2-hour time trial with some of the best bike riders behind him, he really doesn't want to be rid of this man at this stage.
That's mad. I cannot understand why he's done that. He should have at least slowed down. He's looking over. He's actually surprised to see that he's popped Stefano Garzelli off his wheel. A little shake of the head there. I don't think he expected to blow him away. But in fact, that is going to make it even more difficult for Jalabert to stay at the front of this race.
Well, we've still got 5 more climbs after this to come, including the climb of La Redoute, which is a real steep climb. It requires a very low gear. And this is the moment the elastic snapped. Little acceleration by Jalabert, and the flag is out from Garzelli.
Garzelli maybe overheating a bit there. He had a big thermal jacket on as well, and you can see just a while back Jalabert started stripping himself down to be as light as possible, and the big attacks now, Phil, starting to come in the group behind. The man in second position there is Peter Farazijn, rides for the Cofidis team of Frank van den Broeke, and the Lampre rider moving up to the front here is certainly looking over his shoulder, trying to see if Sevgeny Spruk can come up behind in that group of riders.
Well, Lampre would like a result now in these classic races. They've had a lot of men in a lot of moves and nothing's come out of them so far this season. This is the 4th round in the World Cup with just one more to come, the Amstel Gold Race, before they take a rest in the single-day events and we start looking at the big tours of the season, starting of course with the Tour of Italy.
Big long line shows the fact that the main field picking up pace here. You see, you don't allow a man like Jalabert to ride off the front of a group like this and build up a lead of 1 or 2 minutes. And Phil, those clouds above Jalabert there looking a little black, as if there is the possibility of rain or snow coming into the race towards the end, as in fact the weatherman had told us before the start.
Well, you know, it is April in the Ardennes, and these mountains, well, the hills really, but they do see many weather changes.
But just as this crash, there's a crash happened that came over race radio there, and in fact we've gone back to have a look at this. The Lampre rider at the front is attacking. He's being followed here by Peter Farazijn, and Axel Merckx has gone down on the ground there. Axel was obviously a little bit too close. They moved across the road, and that's caused a bit of panic in the front of the main field.
Well, that's a bit embarrassing for Axel. Looked like it might have been his own fault, and his dad's had to commentate on that, because we're on the climb of the Côte de Rosier here. 70 kilometres to go to the finish. Andrimont is the location of the race. I can see Michael Bogart's jersey down there. Also on form, riding for Holland and Rabobank, of course.
Had a great season so far. A complete domination of Paris-Nice by the Rabobank team, and obviously the end winner going to Michael Bogart. But the red, white and blue jersey at the front of the race is champion of France, Laurent Jalabert, trying to do an epic ride here. This is a race that has always evaded him. He's won the Flèche Wallonne in the past, and this is one of the most suitable races, I feel, for Laurent Jalabert. It's his kind of climbs, it's his kind of temperament. You have to be a courageous rider, but his tactics leave something to be desired.
Well, he would love somebody to come and give him a hand here, that's obvious, but he's ridden the man off his wheel, and if he's that tired, there doesn't seem much point in waiting for Garzelli. He may be backpedaling a little bit. He may decide now whether he should wait for that lead group, which is rather large. Had it been a group of maybe 5 or 6 riders, he might well have sat up and waited, but it isn't. It's quite a big peloton here, so he's in a bit of a mess, frankly, right now. Laurent Jalabert doesn't quite know what to do. This is Massimo Codol from Italy, new boy on the Lampre Daking team, playing the workhorse and keeping everybody in touch with Jalabert just now.
Peter Farazijn of Cofidis in second position. One of the Belgian riders brought into the Cofidis squad from France over the winter period, just to strengthen them so that at least there would be somebody capable of helping Frank van den Broeke in the latter parts of these classics. Van den Broeke obviously looking to put in a good performance today, although still Cofidis not too happy about the fact that he rode Paris-Roubaix last week. The gap now, Phil, has gone out to 1 minute and 1 second for Jalabert, and there's a split in the group.
Well, this young man's doing a good bit of and there's Garzelli just slipped back in, so they've caught Garzelli already, as Axel Merckx looks okay after his crash. 10th in the Tour de France. Oh dear me, it's not his day. He's dropped his drinking bottle now.
Axel doesn't look too hurt at all. I think he'd be more embarrassed than anything else, knowing that at the finish line his dad's commentating on this on TV. I wonder what he's got to say about that.
Might find out later on, but right now he's got onto the group here. Looks okay. There's a lot of Mapei boys up here because apart from Axel Merckx, Andre Noe is the other rider just behind him. This is the pressure time now because the hills come thick and fast all the way to the finish, and it really does wear down the legs. And that's why I can't believe this man has gone out on a suicide mission. We're going over the top of the Côte du Rosier now, and the snow is up here.
We're in fact not too far from the highest point of Belgium, the Côte de Barrac-Freteur at 700 metres, only 2,000 feet above sea level. But in the wintertime you can actually go cross-country skiing in this area.
Well, there's the group down there, and led by Lampre Dakin at the moment. Jalabert out on his own and being, well, I can't say he's been left out there to fry because I think it's pretty chilly. Here is how Axel Merckx loses his drinking bottle. Crashes to one side, he has a little look at it and thinks, oh dear. I think that was the word he used.
Over the summit of the Côte de Rosier for the main group, and in second position there you can see that the world champion Oscar Kamenzin being led up there by his teammate. His teammate on this occasion is Massimo Codol, new rider on the Lampre squad. And Jalabert riding sensibly. The fact that he's got a long way to go, he hasn't forgotten the fact that he does need to eat and does need to keep his energy levels topped up. But this is a very difficult task to ask a man in a race like Liège-Bastogne-Liège to ride on your own all the way to the finish, because there are still a lot of big teams in that group behind who will organise a chase behind a man like Jalabert.
Well, the other professionals must be thinking he really is out to shoot himself in the foot here today. 68 kilometres to go. Sorry about the odd bits of picture breakup, but the atmospherics are causing those. And Jalabert would love some help, and it's simply not coming his way. As we go further back down the road, everybody decides now it's time to take on food. This rider here is Pascal Chanteur up in this group. Behind him is the world champion Kamenzin. One rider, it looks like, from Once trying to slow down the reaction, but apart from that, there's nothing happening up here now.
For the moment, it's still a very big group here in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and I don't feel the splits will come this year, Phil, until we actually get to the Côte de la Redoute. They hit that climb with around about 30 kilometres left to go to the finish, and it's a steep climb along the side of the motorway where the big names finally come to the front and really put the hammer down.
And now they're fanning out across the road and nobody wanting to take up the chase, so the Mapei boys are just keeping the pace up nicely. And this is Cedric Vasseur in the Crédit Agricole colours. No sign, I'm sorry to say, of Chris Boardman in this group. It is a big group though, and we haven't seen everybody in it, as the gap has now moved up to 1 minute 6 seconds. It's hardly a gap at all. Garzelli came back into this group a few minutes ago, so there's only one man up front, and that's Laurent Jalabert, the champion of France, who isn't racing in France at the moment, which is something of a shame.
Big pressure on the front by Mapei. Although Bartoli doesn't seem to have come to the front very often in the race so far today, Phil, they're obviously still riding in defence of his chance of taking the hat-trick, the winner last year and the year before of this event. He is certainly going to try and go for it in the final couple of climbs. Last year he waited until the Côte de Saint-Tillemont to launch his attack. This year he might wait just a little bit later, because I reckon he's still pretty tired after that win in Folèche-Wallonne, which was an incredible performance, leaping away so far from the finish in those terrible conditions.
Well, he certainly won't attempt to emulate what Jalabert is doing just now. Few riders would expect to hold this lot off for very long. They have a tourist ride here called Tilth-Bastogne-Tilth, which is a slightly reduced distance of the Liège-Bastogne-Liège. It packs out with touring cyclists, which of course they all develop into a cycle race by the time you get back to the finishing line. It uses the same climbs as well.
Jalabert picking his way around these corners. He's ridden this course many times over the past, and he's always wanted to win Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and today he's trying to build up as big a lead as possible before he gets to the Côte de la Redoute, because once he gets there you can be certain that there's going to be a big response behind. Riders like Van den Broek, Michele Bartoli, they'll come to the front and start to launch the attacks, and that's where the race is going to happen, I reckon, today.
Well, the former world number one removed from the summit by Michele Bartoli. This is Vasseur, in fact, who's trying to get across to him now, so he's gone by himself. At least I don't think anybody behind. So Vasseur, who made his name in the Tour de France 2 years ago when he got the yellow jersey, and now trying to catch up with Laurent Jalabert. Now Jalabert would welcome his arrival, I'm sure of that.
One Frenchman chasing another Frenchman. Vasseur waited till they'd gone over the summit of the climb, and he's hoping to take a few risks on the descent and bridge the gap to Jalabert. The gap at the top of the climb was 1 minute and 6 seconds, and that's going to be a difficult gap to bridge, because I don't reckon Cedric Vasseur's form is actually all that good at the moment. He's building himself up to be in peak condition later in the season for the Tour de France, but he is getting down this descent pretty rapidly.
This is the other type of cyclist that chooses this particular classic and the Flèche Wallonne with the hills, more the style of Marco Pantani and the likely winners of the Tour de France, rather than the famous single-day classic riders like Johan Museeuw and the riders who've done so well in the flatter courses over the cobblestones. But Cedric Vasseur fits into this category for Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and he's done well to get off the front, but he now doesn't seem to be going anywhere. We need a swing round to the right and see where the rest of the race is, I think.
Interesting to note that Marco Pantani decided not to come up to Belgium to ride Flèche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège, because this race is usually the first time that we get a chance to see the riders who are preparing to ride races like the Tour of Italy and the Tour de France, the climbers. Miguel Indurain always used to ride this as one of his first races, then go on to take part in the Amstel Gold Race, the first test over the longer distances. But Vasseur, realizing he's not getting too much advantage, he's looked back a couple of times here as we follow him around this corner here. He's not managed to break the stranglehold or break the elastic on the main field behind.
And he leans into that corner, takes it very wide indeed. There's the group he's left. And again, still a lot of speed in those legs down there as we race through the trees, which are barely showing the signs of spring because we're so high up and it's a bit chilly. And it looks as though they've wound him in, so it's all over. So Vasseur has been caught by the advance party, and only Jalabert out front now.
Big teammate here for the Mapei squad, Luca Shinto, used to ride for the MG team. A real workhorse, a former winner of the Tour de Langkawi himself. Right up there as well with him is Michele Bartoli. The speed now and urgency starting to come into the front of this main field.
But it just shows you how well Jalabert must be going to hold them off. It's 1:28 is the latest gap.
Well, that's a pretty impressive performance by him, because the main field has been stretched out over the last 5 or 10 kilometers. The pressure is certainly on as Jalabert goes through the feeding station here. He will get more and more encouragement from the fact that they haven't started to close down on his gap, and he's going to keep going like this now and ride and try and build up as big an advantage as possible, and hope that when the main field go through the feeding station here, there's a general slowing down as everybody stops to pick up their bags.
Another big name not in the Deutsche Telekom team today is Jan Ullrich as well. He's still having his problems bringing himself back onto form as he continues to ride in the rear bunches of the stage races, which is a shame, as he heads up towards the final preparation for the Tour de France.
The next climb on the horizon as they go through the town of La Glaise here is going to be the Côte de l'Orsay. Not a very difficult climb, but one that in fact takes the course back over towards the west. They head then over towards the main road and then up towards the Côte de la Redoute. Big urgency on the front now, Phil. It's definitely Mapei who have decided the time is enough. Left Jalabert out there long enough to stew. They want to try and close it down and bring the race all together when they get to the final climbs of the stage. And starting all of that is going to be the Côte de la Redoute. Once they get to the Côte de la Redoute, the hills come thick and fast after that, and there's some very difficult ones.
And the riders stripping off instead of taking on food here, throwing their overcoats away because it is getting a little bit warmer. But it's not just the heat now, they're going to make it warmer with the pace as well. And the big climb of La Redoute, which starts outside the little town of Remouchon, and then it's very, very steep. There'll be a huge crowd waiting too to see the riders over the top of that. And it looks like the Mapei boys are confident that Bartoli can do the double, because they're trying to pull him back into contention.
Lucas Shinto on the front, a very good friend of Max Chiandri. He's really putting the pressure on. Another one of those rare riders these days who completely devote themselves to the team. They don't think about their own performances. They give everything up, every chance of victory for themselves to try and make sure that the team can win. And he's switched across again. Another of the big changes this winter to come along to the Mapei squad. He was brought in with Michele Bartoli as one of his faithful lieutenants.
Still a very heavy, unmanageable group after we go over the Côte de l'Orsay, which is 4.4 kilometers long. We then move on to the valley and down to Remouchon, and then we climb the Côte de la Redoute, and that's only 2.2 kilometers, but it is a brute and it hurts. And we're back through the feed station here for this group of riders as well now.
Different colour of jerseys coming to the front now, the orange and white jerseys of Rabobank. They're obviously thinking about the performance of Rolf Sørensen here. This is the race route that the riders face, and this is in fact the route on the way back. And as Phil said earlier, 9 of the climbs are in the final 100 kilometres, finishing off with the Côte d'Ornay, the Côte de Sartillemont, and the real sting in the tail introduced just 2 years ago, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas.
Hill number 10. And at the moment we're heading for hill number 6 on the map, the Côte de l'Orsay. And Laurent Jalabert, I can't believe he planned this attack, and I can't make any sense of it. It must be confusing the riders too. They haven't improved on him at all. He's still over a minute ahead. As we look here at Lucas Shinto, I saw him win the Tour of Langkawi a couple of years ago. It was the second edition of that event, and he doesn't win many races. He was coming back from injury at the time. Andre Noah, they're the workhorses now, and it looks as though we've got also there Gabriele Massaglia, who is also riding now, but he's in the lamprey colours.
A lot of riders from Oncé moving to the front here now, thinking about trying to organise some kind of blocking technique.
Solano going through there, so it's good to see him up there. Look at the faces there, Paul. The pace is now on. Look at the gaps forming as the riders can't hold the wheels here.
Serious pressure on the front of that main field, because the group now starting to split into 3 or 4 different sections, and all of that is being done at the front by one man at the moment. That's Lucas Shinto from the Mapei squad, and in fact, if these riders aren't too careful, they're going to lose out at the feeding station.
And here's Shinto now at the front, still keeping the pressure on those pedals. And you can see the wind coming from the right there, and it split the bunch at the minute. 62 kilometers still to go.
Andrea Noe in second position, thinking, oh, I wonder when this guy's going to swing off, then it's going to be my turn to go to the front. It is very difficult riding for the big teams, because, you know, on a number of occasions during the year, you have to go to the front and ride like a man possessed. You've got to dig very, very deep into your reserves and realize that the effort you put in may well be only over 200 kilometers, and then all you can do is just clear off and go to the finish.
Mark Lotz was the Rabobank rider we saw there, number 40. The Rabo boys have got some great riders here today. Martin Den Bakker and Rolf Sørensen, Leon Van Bon, of course, Michael Bogart and Nicky Eversholt and Marcus Seberg, all likely riders to be in the finale of this event today. It's sort of getting it back together again. It's hurt 1 or 2, but they're crawling their way back into a nice compact peloton. Was 128, but it's now back to 116. So that pace-making by Lucas Shinto has had an effect. It's starting to come back against Laurent Jalabert.
That's not surprising when you look at the long, thin line of the peloton here. It's one man following one man, and several big gaps starting to appear. These are the position of the World Cup at the moment. André Schmiel is the leader with 152 points, ahead of Van Petegem, and that victory last week by Andrea Taffy moves him up into 3rd spot. Another Belgian, Frank van den Broek, in 4th.
Further down the list there, Franco Ballerini still on the frame, just. And he would like to score a bit better, I think, than that. He's been such a consistent bike rider over the years of the World Cup. Looking down to the twists and turns of the Ardennes, the trees are late in bursting forth for spring. That peloton is somewhere in the region of 50 riders strong now. It's been getting bigger and bigger. Although, having said that, Paul, it might well have lost a few just there. Look a bit smaller.
A few riders got tailed off the back going through the feeding station there. Anybody who's got slightly sore legs may well have taken a right-hand turn there and looked for the Soigneur's vehicle and a quick lift back to the finish line, because they know what's in store after this. After the Côte de l'Orsay, they've got the Côte de la Redoute, and then if your legs are sore, you've got a very difficult job trying to get up there.
And it's not all downhill into the finish either, because although we do drop down towards Liège again and up to Ons, where the race will finish, there are 1 or 2 hills waiting on the way. This rider here is Lucas Shinto. He's got himself back on the front. Terrific workhorse, and not a big winner. Rarely gets his chance to win, but like a lot of riders in the Mapei boys, knows exactly how his job is.
Lucas Shinto's a big, strong boy on the front of this group. He's really powering it along. And the thing is, in his mind, he's not thinking about getting to the finish line in Anse, just outside Liège. What he's thinking about is getting himself to the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute. Then his job is done. He's then just got to cruise to the finish line. Jalabert still on his own at the front of the race, but there is a big reaction behind, and I feel sure that the next time we get a time check with 57 kilometers to go, it's going to be inside the 1 minute mark, because although Jalabert is riding well, he's a fantastic rider, number 2 currently in the world, the champion of France. It's impossible to hold off against a big field bowling along like that.
But he is riding so well, and he makes it look so deceptively easy. And yet you've seen the faces on the chase behind, and they're not really getting into his lead just yet. He's such a remarkable stylist, Laurent Jalabert.
Very strong rider. You see how he sits fairly high up, fairly upright on his machine, but the sheer power coming out of those thighs, and he's really very much a classics rider, an explosive man. He's got the power to handle these short, steep climbs of the Ardennes. Tactically, normally he plays it to perfection, but he always seems to get a little too excited about Liège-Bastogne-Liège. This is one of the races he wants to win. Those are his performances over the last couple of years. Last year, second, 97 second, 1995 fourth. So he likes this race.
But you could say that again. Well, of course, the seconds are behind Bartoli. And Bartoli back in this chase group at the moment. Number 6 is André Noah, another rider who's really come good. He's been around a little while now, but he usually rides a good Tour of Italy. Lucas Shinto there, itching to get by again on the Rabobank rider, which is Mark Lotz. And Credit Agricole now have 2 riders in this bunch up near the front. Pascal Chanteur. It's a lovely day if you're sitting in a car, but it's still chilly out there, as these riders now are making sure that Jalabert doesn't slip them by too far, because they can't give a man of his quality a very big lead.
Sorry about the picture breakup. That's because of the link from the motorbike cameras to the helicopter and then down to the finish line. That corner Jalabert was about to take there was underneath the railway line, and then he starts immediately to go up on the Côte de l'Orsay.
And these riders shortly to arrive at the same point, of course. Still the gap is around 1 minute 16 seconds.
The leader of the Casino team for today, and that's Laurent Roux, came across to Casino during the winter changes from one team to the other. He used to ride for TVM, and now very comfortably sitting at the back of this big train on the front of the main field. He's keeping himself to the front of the bunch there because he realizes the Côte de l'Orsay is coming up. The advantage for Laurent Jalabert at the bottom of the Côte de l'Orsay now 1 minute and 10 seconds.
And the board there indicating 11 riders in that chase group, but I think that was wrong. It must have been sort of an old marker, because it's bigger than that. Jalabert committed now to something I don't believe he wanted to do, and that's break away at this stage of the race. He should not have shed himself with Garzelli, even if it had meant slowing down, but the speed Garzelli went back to the main field, he was either realizing his plight or he really is very tired. There's the gradients, 12% on the Côte de l'Orsay. It's fairly long, 3 kilometers, and it takes him up to 200 meters rather, above sea level. It's quite high.
From the top of this climb, Laurent Jalabert will face a 15-kilometer ride to the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute, and if he can hold on to his 1 minute advantage to the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute, he will then see a group of riders coming up to join him. Probably the favourites for the overall victory at the end, because the Côte de la Redoute is really one of the steepest climbs on the course. Its average gradient is 8.3%, but in certain parts it's a lot steeper than that.
Still André Noah setting the pace at the front. It's coming down reasonably rapidly now. 52 seconds it is. Lots there. Rolf Sorensen also getting in on the picture now. The world champion in the white jersey of Oscar Kammerzind. So strong when he won his title last year. And then he hadn't won a race till then, of course, so he came out and won the Tour of Lombardy after that too, to prove himself to be truly a worthy world champion.
Few problems with the team though is non-selection for the Tour de France, obviously stinging him a little. And that's why he, at the end of the season, gave him a fairly good going-away present before he swapped over teams. That victory at the World Championships backed up with the Tour of Lombardy. Jalabert now on the upper slopes of the Côte de l'Orsay, and the big names, Phil, in that main field starting to move towards the front. They're realising now we're coming to the very crucial part of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, the oldest bike race, the oldest professional bike race that there is, Le Doyen they call it, meaning the old one. And Jalabert dearly would love to get a victory here, because this is a race that the French really do appreciate. 12% in this corner at the moment, and Jalabert still doesn't look under pressure. He's riding very sensibly, riding within himself, not really over the limit.
Well, he's a remarkable bike rider, the world #1 until this year, and he's so consistent for the whole year. That's why he stays on top of the world rankings, but Bartley's got him off at the moment. Let's see how his summer goes. Not sure whether
55 seconds. So Laurent Jalabert knows now that they're starting to accelerate behind. They're starting to pull into his advantage, and he can only hope now that he can survive to the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute.
Well, first of all, he's got to cross the Côte de l'Orsay, and then, as Paula said, he's got that long charge down to the little village of Remachon before he starts climbing away on the La Redoute climb, which climbs up on the main Liège-Charleroi motorway. He's not a man of the mountains, he's not a recognised huge climber, Laurent Jalabert, but once he gets his rhythm and they leave him alone, he's a very, very strong bike rider.
He's had a great season so far this year with 2 overall wins, one in the Semaine Catalane and one in the Tour of Pays Basque, bringing his total to 5 victories so far this season.
Now let's have a look back at the pack. I'm not too sure why we're seeing this again, but there's been an attack from the field, I think, as the riders start to break clear. This could be the Oncé team. Is this André Perron going clear?
Strangely enough, André Perron is, in fact, attacking off the front of the group. Now, I find that a strange move. Perron's tactics really are rather bizarre. He's got Laurent Jalabert at the front of the race, 55 seconds ahead, and Perron, riding for the same Oncé squad, is trying to go out to the front. Now, that will inspire the group there to pick up their pace and ride towards catching the leader on the road, Laurent Jalabert.
Well, that is very confusing, but anyway, André Perron is trying to get clear, and if they've got 2 Oncé in the lead, well, who knows what might happen. Nobody's reacted to Perron just yet.
Still sitting on the front, it's the white jersey of the Mappé squad. Mappé are very happy just to set the pace. They want to try and keep the race sensible until they get to Côte de la Redoute. The gap still coming down, 51 seconds. They're slowly starting to eat into the lead of Laurent Jalabert. 2 Cofidis riders moving to the front of the group there. The 3rd place rider is Farazine, and the 4th place rider, Van den Broeke.
Well, Jalabert is making them work, and work probably a lot harder than they would have liked to here. And it still doesn't make sense as to why he's gambling on such a long attack to the finish, because he's been out to 1.5 minutes approximately, but he's now back to inside a minute. So clearly, unless he sprouts wings on La Redoute, he is not going to get away from this group.
And if he's not careful, La Redoute might leap up and smack him in the face like a good boxer, because it's a very difficult climb to handle, especially if you've been riding alone for 30 kilometers beforehand. But Jalabert doesn't seem to be too worried about that at the moment. He's settling into his own pace, a pace that he's comfortable with. And there you can see, in fact, Perron has come to 55 seconds down on Laurent Jalabert, his leader, and 1:05 to the main field. But that's a really bizarre move by Perron.
He's 10 seconds clear of this bunch now, and still trying to get forward. Jalabert continues to set his pace. He's content to do that. Concentrates. There's a rumour, in fact, that he may not be able to defend his national championship in June this year, because he has so far not gone to France for the compulsory medical tests, which all the French riders must take now before they're allowed to race in the national championships.
Jalabert has been very outspoken against the French regime throughout the winter months, not happy with the way that the French are organising the controls of the riders. He feels happy to submit to the UCI controlling system, but he's definitely at loggerheads with the French Federation.
Regrouping of the field, well, it certainly looks like 50 riders actually now, as they've all come back together again, and I presume that Perron is still just out in front. We haven't had a camera down there with him yet, but anyway, if he's not, then he's back in that group of 50. But Jalabert certainly out in front, inside a minute now.
The big problem Jalabert could have later in the season is not only the fact that he won't be able to ride the French national championships and defend his title because he hasn't been submitting himself to the French Federation controls. He will not get into the national team for the World Championships, and that would be a bitter blow for this man who himself is a former world champion at the time trial.
Yes, a lot more important to him, of course, than winning the National Road Race Championship yet again. Credit Agricole up near the front of the rides as well. Still, nobody has taken command of this bunch yet. There's still too many riders here, I think, and it could well be, Paul, that it won't see any change until we start the climb of La Redoute. Then obviously the strong men will be projected out.
Well, once we go over the summit, although the main field was shown the summit of the climb, the Côte de l'Orsay doesn't finish quite as easily as that. This is Laurent Jalabert's standings in the UCI World Rankings over the last few years. Started off at 158th, but from 1995 he was first through 1997, and he dropped down at the end of last year to second place behind Michele Bartoli. But this man has certainly been a big, strong rider. There's his advantage now. It's stretched out a bit more, Phil, to 105.
And he's making it look so easy. These boys look to be labouring, but he certainly isn't.
They're certainly waiting till they get over the summit of this climb and then down into the valley road, and then the chase will start to organise itself again, and they will naturally pick up speed along the 15-kilometre stretch from the Côte de l'Orsay to the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute.
And somebody's accelerated off the front. I think it might be Nicky Aebersold who's gone. The champion of Switzerland, going clear. Nobody's reacted from him yet.
That's a surprise attack by Nicky Aebersold leaping out there. He's obviously hoping to pick up Andrea Perron, who's stuck there in the middle of nowhere at the moment. Good rider has been brought across to the Rabobank squad. A very good sprinter indeed. He won a stage at the Tour of Switzerland last year, then went on to take the Swiss National Championships.
So Aebersold climbing clear now on the Côte de l'Orsay, and Jalabert heading up towards the summit of that climb. And in fact, this little group, Paul, coming up now, so we must have caught Perron because he's here again. And he's coming out of the pack. I don't know who the others are at the moment, but Aebersold is certainly in front, and one of these two is Andrea Perron. As the field regroups behind, they're very tenacious, aren't they? An attack now by the Cofidis rider. It looks like Peter Farazijn.
Looks very much like the style of Peter Farazijn, and you can see Once taking a big interest now in the race that's happening at the front here, trying to protect the advantage of Laurent Jalabert, but it may be a bit too late. They should have been working to try and protect that lead earlier on, to try and slow down the organised chase by the Mappé squad. And once again, it's Axel Merckx coming out of the group, trying to get across to that group.
And gets across he does. Those long, thin legs of his always look as though they need straightening out a little bit, because he rides his saddle quite low. Axel Merckx, 10th in his first Tour de France last year. I know a lot of riders dropped out, but that was still an excellent ride by him. Should give him some confidence for this year. Now back up with the leader, Laurent Jalabert, still riding in his crouch position, looking a little bit more determined now than he was before, and I think possibly for the first time he's actually feeling the pressure of the race. Just coming up towards the top of the climb here, then he starts the descent down.
An interesting machine that Jalabert is riding, giant bicycles, carbon fibre machine with those very impressive fork blades in the front there, making this a pretty aerodynamic machine, and almost flat, the seat pin there going up into the saddle, trying to make this one of the top bikes around. I personally would find it a bit strange riding a machine with a sloped tube, but that seems to be the pattern that a lot of the constructors are going for this year, because basically it makes the frame just a little bit smaller and makes for a more rigid build.
Another quick drink, don't blame him for that. Inside a minute, still the gap here. Champion of France. I think everybody bemused as to quite what he is doing here, what tactics he thinks he's playing, and where he expects it to take him, because nobody's getting up to him, and if they do come up, it could well be quite a lot of bike riders now.
Big crowd out to watch Liège-Bastogne-Liège. It's a pretty easy race to come and see, because on the road down to Bastogne, in fact, the race route follows the motorway, so you can stop and see the race go by, jump onto the motorway, drive a couple of stops down and see them come by once again. And then it takes a big loop out from Bastogne over to the Côte de la Roche, and then heads its way back up. And then it's really in the final few kilometers that the climbs start to really pay, because that's when they are much more repetitive.
1 minute and 2 seconds is all it is now, so he's seen it plummet, almost if he's not even looking at it right now, as he continues to keep the pressure on. This is the group now that's just over 60 seconds behind, as they continue to get what they can out and cause the counter-attacks from the field.
Again, the red and white jerseys of Rabobank moving to the front to try and stir it up, help the Mapei riders. Axel Merckx coming up again. Axel's really riding with incredible determination today. He realizes today he has a responsible role in the possible hat-trick for Michele Bartoli. And at the back of the group, everybody getting ready now for the next approach. They're calling up the team cars, trying to make sure that they keep topped up with bottles. One of the riders coming through there, in fact, from Mapei, was Luca Shinto. We saw him at the front of the group just a little while ago. Once they got over the summit of the climb, he put his brakes on, went back to the team car to fill up with water and food, and they will take it up and distribute it amongst through the team.
Well, the way this bunch is riding here, it's showdown on La Redoute, and until we get there, nothing much is going to happen. It's still nibbling at 1 minute approximately. Paolo Bettini here has been back to the food wagon, and he's bringing the stuff up to the riders.
That little green packet, a lot of riders always ask me what is in that little green packet. It's in fact a product called Extran. It's made in Holland, and it's equivalent to about 6 slices of bread. Very good, quick way of getting energy into the body.
Inside 50 kilometers to go. So they're all waiting for La Redoute. It's the ridge in the distance, and it is going to be the showdown today. We are going to see a lot of attacks on that climb, Paul. We've got to.
That's where the race has got to be decided. It's very rare for a group more than 15 or 20 riders to go over the top of the Côte de la Redoute together, because if you're not in the first 10 or 15 at the bottom, a lot of difficulty is had by riders trying to move forward. And that's the climb where in the past Michele Bartoli has launched his attacks and split the race to pieces.
And I wonder how he's feeling. He'll know in those legs after that long escape to win Flèche Wallonne. He's obviously the man in the best position to do the double just at the moment, but I'm not too sure he has the form. Atrocious conditions. Now, is this Rolf Aldag coming back into play here? He's having a great year. No, it's Jacques, who was in that early chase group and didn't get across to the 2 leaders when Garzelli was up with Jalabert.
For Luca Shinto back to the front. 1 minute he was back in the cars giving drinks to all the boys, and now he's on the front of the main field again. This guy is a super domestique, a rare breed of rider, just like Sean Yates, who devoted much of his career to working for other people like Lance Armstrong and also people like Phil Anderson. He gets to the front, does his job, and just gets on with it as much as possible. His next most important thing on the race today is the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute. After that, it's up to the big boys.
Well, Laurent is just getting himself back into time trial mode here now. He knows what it's like to win the world title, and the pictures aren't going to hold there, so we're going to have to go back and have a look at the reforming of this big group here. Now racing across virtually valley roads, heading for Remauchon. Delightful little village in the Ardennes, but unfortunately for the race, the only way out is up the La Redoute climb.
And unfortunately for the riders too, the only way is up. It's a big speed in the main field. You can see the big long line. There's a couple of riders from Once moving to the front now just to keep an eye on affairs and just hoping that their man Laurent Jalabert can conserve a certain amount of his advantage. And over the last 10 kilometers, his advantage has hovered at the 1 minute mark. It came underneath at 1 point to 55 seconds on the Côte de l'Orsay. But since then, Phil, they've never really managed to pull anything back on Jaja.
And here he is, the sun on his back as well now. This beautiful little village too he's passing through. And absolutely idyllic cycling countryside in the Belgian summer, but it's a bit chilly in the Belgian spring. These are the climbs that are remaining. The next one is the La Redoute itself, and then the Côte d'Ance will take the riders up to the finishing line. That's a nasty sting in the tail.
Everybody's moving up and down this group at the moment, trying to get themselves into an ideal position, because they know shortly somebody's going to come to the front of this group and organize the chase completely. It's almost like leading out a bunch sprint at the end, because everybody wants to come into that final corner at the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute in the first 4 or 5 positions. And I'm pretty certain that the way they've been showing themselves so far, that team is going to be Mapei today. They've got a strong team. Most of the riders are still in this group. But interestingly enough, the man who is leading the World Cup overall this morning, André Schmeel, is not in this group, and he's in fact been left somewhat behind. He did start this event and was hoping to try and get himself a few points in the World Cup rankings, but unfortunately this circuit really, Phil, doesn't fall into his abilities.
Well, really, it's not his favourite course. He's more a man for the cobbles of Roubaix than he is for the hills of the Ardennes. But as leader of the World Cup, probably felt obliged to put in an appearance today. Laurent Jalabert still time trialling, still living dangerously and dangling out front, and still confusing us all as to why a man of the quality of Jalabert has gone on such an attack by himself. Look at the chase now, Paul.
Well, it is the Mapei team as we expected. 41 seconds now, the advantage of Laurent Jalabert, and the order's gone out in Team Mapei. Come to the front, get it organised. On the front is Gianni Farazin, followed by Luca Scinto, and in third place Andrea Noe. The man who will be looking after Michele Bartoli in the final few kilometres here is certainly going to be Paolo Bettini. Very similar in style, very similar in stature to the leader of the Mapei squad, and you can see the big power now coming up, and it's going to be pretty soon we'll be seeing the shape of Laurent Jalabert on the horizon.
And I presume that's why Bettini has not been sent to the front to chase down Jalabert, but they're keeping him fresh for La Redoute. Maybe Bartoli wants this man back in the pack before the climb begins, so he's free then to plan his own attack. 46 kilometres to go to the finish, and the La Redoute climb now is not very far away. We'll go down into Remechon, and then we go through the back streets of that delightful little town, and then we climb away.
Jalabert fairly comfortable on his machine, sitting on the top of the handlebars there, gripping onto the brake levers, keeping the pressure on as much as possible, taking a lot of wind into his face, and not the most aerodynamic position, but he's obviously trying to keep himself as comfortable as possible, realizing there's a lot of tough climbs yet to come. The race average so far 40.75 kilometers an hour, so this has been pretty rapid when you think of the climbs we've been over.
Very quick indeed. The 3 riders now from Mapei have been told to get out and do it, but we could be on course here to witness the fastest Liège-Bastogne-Liège in history, thanks to the effort being made here by Laurent Jalabert. Jalabert looks over his shoulder now. I think he's seen them coming. It could be the end of the line for this breakaway, and not soon enough, I would suspect, because he still has a chance to recover for the climb of La Redoute. Jalabert definitely has eased up. There's the service car, the neutral service car, so I think you're going to see Laurent slip into the main field here. So the chase down by Mapei has proved worthwhile. They're bringing back Laurent.
A lot of these riders in this group have got to say a big thank you to Team Mapei for the organisation they put in at the front of the race. It's not by accident they're the #1 team in the world. They have proved over the last few years that they can consistently ride well in these World Cup races, these one-day races which they specialise in. They've wanted to be competitive in the big stage races as well, but it's so difficult nowadays. And there's another attack coming from an Once rider there, so Jalabert must be almost caught, unless that's another tactical error by our friend Andrea Perron.
Well, there's no doubt this race is on a record schedule. We've only had one Liège-Bastogne-Liège break the 40 kilometres an hour barrier, and that was last year with Michele Bartoli. And at the moment, it's going even faster than that. And there is Jalabert. He's caught. And we're on the sort of main road approach to Remechon now. And the field have got themselves back into order as they all come back together again. Not far now from the switch over to the climb up to La Redoute.
An incredible piece of work done by the Mapei squad to bring Laurent Jalabert back into the fold. That's a very strange move by Jalabert. He must have known he was going to get caught. There's Oscar Kamenzin, the world champion, in the white jersey with the stripe across it, moving to the front as well. And now, Phil, we're going to get a chance to see who the real contenders are going to be in this event, because they're all moving to the front. It's almost like a bunch sprint down there at the moment. A lot of people taking risks to try and get into that little narrow road at the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute in the first 4 or 5 places.
Well, I guarantee Mapei will be in there somewhere. This team is absolutely formidable, and the nice thing about the Mapei team is that they are prepared to race in all of the races around the world. They turn up in the Tour of Langkawi in Malaysia, they go out to the United States, and it's nice to see they're not afraid to take part in all of the events. There we are, Hawaii. That's the next village before we get to Remouchon, and 43 kilometres still to go.
And it's always the white jerseys on the front, the Mapei squad, keeping the pressure on, continuing with the work that's been theirs over the last 20 kilometres. Now what they want to do is keep the speed high to stop their man Michele Bartoli getting swamped on the approach to the bottom of the climb to the Côte de la Redoute. Incredible work being done by Luca Shinto, followed by Andrea Noe. And the next man moving up to the front here is also expecting to find the shoulder of Michele Bartoli coming up to him shortly.
Because that'll be little Bettini. And this is Farazin coming through now. That's an interesting little... seeing a lot of different riders here than what we normally see in the classics, as they now know that they've got to race through to the climb itself and then decide. And our pictures are not behaving themselves totally at the moment, but we're seeing now that the temperature has gone from 0 up to 11 degrees. That's about 52 degrees Fahrenheit. So they'll feel a little bit warmer, and guaranteed once the climb starts it's going to be quite hot. Right, that's where we're heading for, the Côte de la Redoute. It is 5.7 kilometres away from the race now. So once we leave this town, there's a little bit of open countryside, and then we're into Remouchon.
Serious organisation by the #1 team in the world at the moment. 4 of the first 4 places are taken by the Mapei squad, and moving up into fifth spot there, I would expect to see Michele Bartoli. Wearing number 3, Farazin is really giving it everything, followed here by Noe, followed by Shinto, and moving further forward, Axel Merckx is having a great race today because he too has moved forward.
Well, the whole team is here now. Merckx says he doesn't care who wins as long as it's a member of the Mapei team today. And they're all throwing the weight behind this move now. This is Figueres who's got... No, it's not. Sorry, Paul. It's Andre Noe again now, who's got himself back to the front. Figueres was the rider, had that problem quite a way back now. They're saying there are 48 riders in this bunch. It's a big bunch to come down to the narrow streets of Remouchon.
Well, of those 4 or 5 riders from Mapei on the front there, most of them will actually give up the ghost when they get to the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute, because for them, the finish of today's Liège-Bastogne-Liège is at the bottom. They have to make sure that Michele Bartoli and Paolo Bettini get around that corner in first and second position. Now we're starting to see the Cofidis riders moving to the front as well, and that, in fact, is Frank van den Broeke using his former teammates there to stay near the front. And there's a little sign there coming from Axel Merckx: keep out of the way because I'm coming back, I'm finished.
The movement in that bunch, they're literally fighting each other now to see the front of the bunch before we get through to Remouchon. There's a few little chicanes round the back entries of the town before we start the climb under a railway bridge. As we now cross one of the delightful rivers that abound here, now we're heading down towards the La Redoute through the chicanes, and this now is a big peloton heading for the climb.
38 kilometres to go to the finish, 36 kilometres to go from the summit of the climb. The big long line is stretched out by the Mapei squad, and they will be happy to know that their man Michele Bartoli is right at the front. That's the motorway, in fact, that takes the riders up to Liège.
Well, the riders now are leaving at the little town as we now start the climb. It'll start in earnest in a few seconds' time when they go to the right here. And this is where we'll see how many people are watching Liège-Bastogne-Liège, because the crowd will be very dense on the summit. It looks like the domestics and Mapei, they're now going to go as fast and for as long as they can, and then can Michele Bartoli take over from them, because this is the most crucial stage now of the event.
The big names moving to the front too. Axel Merckx has recovered now, taking over the leading position. The red, white and blue there of the champion of Holland is also very much to the front of this group, and also Frank van den Broeke, the man that the Belgians are hoping is going to become the new Eddy Merckx.
And the main road there been turned into a car park to watch Liège-Bastogne-Liège come through. Interesting to see Michael Bogart has moved up, Paul. He's fourth wheel at the minute, and also I think it's David Rebelin come through as well.
Moving into second place behind Axel Merckx is Michele Bartoli. This is his climb. He's hoping that this is going to be his race. That is Rebelin on the left-hand side. Michael Bogart in the red, white and blue on the right-hand side. All the big names now coming to the front. And in fact there you can just see off to the left-hand side of Axel Merckx, tucked in out of the wind there, is Frank van den Broeke.
Well, Axel Merckx is riding superbly here and clearly committed to his team captain and not thinking so much of himself. Well, his father's been here as well. Liège-Bastogne-Liège, he won it 5 times, And now Axel is trying to help his team leader get into a good position to win it for the 3rd time.
Stuck in the middle of that group there, Oscar Kamenzin moving forward, defending his champion's jersey quite admirably. It seems this year as if the curse of the rainbow jersey has not affected Oscar Kamenzin. He moves up there very easily around the outside to bring the World Champions jersey to the front of this line. But still, Axel Merckx is digging deep. He knows he's got to keep going for as long as possible to try and prevent any attacks coming from the other teams and to try and set up the attack from Michele Bartoli, which is certain to come pretty soon.
And so is the tough part of the climb. This isn't the hardest part of the climb yet. It gets steeper than this. Kamenzin looking very impressive. Nice to see the world champion mixing it at the front of a race at this time of the year. He won his title, of course, in October last season. And watch out now, because Frank van den Broek has found the rear wheel of Michele Bartoli. So it looks like Van den Broek also is going to be interested in what happens in the next few minutes. And watch out for Michael Bogert. He's come from the back to the front on the left of the picture.
And there it is, Bartoli's attack. That was the moment he was waiting for. He was waiting for the moment when Axel Merckx started to fail, and he leapt out of the pack just like he did on this climb last year, and the response is coming from Michael Bogert. But nobody can react to the acceleration of Michele Bartoli on a climb like this.
Oh, that's incredible, the way he's accelerated away. And this is on the steeper part of the climb now. They've got it barriered this year. As the Bartoli now is going to try and keep this pressure on for as long as possible. It's still a little way to go to the summit. It eases, then it kicks again, and then it levels out gradually over the top. Bogert isn't like as fluid as Bartoli, but he's cracking.
Well, in fact, Bartoli is not the Bartoli of last year, because he's not opened up the big gap as he did. And there you can see Michael Bogert is coming across the gap nice and smoothly. Also very close to the front there was the champion of Switzerland, Nicky Abersold, and in 3rd position there is David Rebellin.
So Michele Bartoli has given it his best shot. Bogert a little bit more laboured, but in fact is bringing the rest up to him. There's an awful lot of riders coming up towards Bartoli now.
It's incredible the way he rides these climbs. Well, he's right on the bottom of his handlebars. It looks as if he's trying to sprint. We're on the steep part of the climb now, 19%. It has had the effect of breaking up that main field. There were 48 riders at the bottom, and there are a lot less now, a small group starting to form. Bartoli, he looks confident. He keeps looking over his shoulders.
Van den Broek's going, he's come onto the shoulder of Bartoli. Look at this for a sprint. 2 great champions side by side. They are ripping away from the field.
Well, I thought Bartoli was weakening. He was just waiting to see what the reaction was going to be of the other riders in this group. As soon as he saw Van den Broek came, he accelerated very easily, and now Van den Broek taking up 1st position.
Well, Van den Broek has openly said he wants to win this race, and as long as Bartoli finishes 2nd, he won't care. And now he's waited, and it's the first time we've seen him at the front. He's controlled himself. He has had a very, very good Paris-Roubaix, and now he wants to do well in Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Well, that was an incredible turn of the books. It looked as if Michele Bartoli was the strongest there, but once Van den Broek actually accelerated, Bartoli was having difficulty staying on the wheel. I think the reason he rode alongside Van den Broek when he attacked there was a psychological attempt to show him that he was the strongest man in the race. But I tell you what, Van den Broek certainly had the big acceleration, and he's going clear over the top.
Well, look at this now. Frank van den Broek coming up towards the summit of the Côte de la Redoute. And now, has he got Bartoli on his wheel, or is he clear on his own? He must be on his own. He's taken a long look over his shoulder. And this is a fine piece of riding. He hid himself all day, and he's chosen well. He even allowed Bartoli to make the attack, and then he saw that Bartoli wasn't the man of the previous years, and he went up alongside him, and he shows some terrific strength.
In fact, Bogert is the man who's come and passed Michele Bartoli. Bartoli now starting to recover as we approach the summit of the Côte de la Redoute, and he's getting onto the wheel of Michael Bogert. The gap over the top of the climb there, Phil, was 8 seconds, and Den Bakker, in fact, is coming up into 4th position on the road.
So the great battle of La Redoute not turning out quite as we expected. We really didn't expect to see Frank van den Broek ride away. Now, can these riders get on terms with him? The gap is not big yet, but there's a small descent here after this right-hand bend. We ride a little bit of flat, then we drop down, and then we still have 3 serious climbs which are noted, and of course the climb up to the finish. So in all, 4 climbs still to come here for all of the riders. Still a long way to go.
24 years of age, Frank van den Broek, wearing number 61 today, has 36 kilometers left to go to the finish. And even though he is turning out to be a classy champion, I don't see him staying this far in front towards the end. I'm certain that that group of riders behind are going to catch him before the finish.
There's the start of the descent. It's not a big descent. And then Van den Broek, is he going to try and stay away and put himself in a position like Laurent Jalabert was in just before the start of this climb? Or is he going to wait and see if he can deliver another blow later? Judging by the way he's riding, Paul, he's answered the question. He's not going to wait.
He's not going to wait, but there are two riders from Rabobank behind in that group with Michele Bartoli. Dimbaka on the front in second place, Michael Bogard, and Bartoli. Not the great Michele Bartoli of the last 2 years, because this was the climb where he laid his foundations for victory, and now he's having to seek help from the Dutch rivals from across the border. Two riders chasing, three riders chasing, and there is Van den Broek a bit further up the road. His advantage for the moment 100 meters, but this was the incredible attack by Frank van den Broek. He comes up alongside Michele Bartoli. Bartoli tries to respond here, looks at the face of Van den Broek, opens up the gas a little bit more just to impress the young rival.
Yeah, but it didn't work, did it? Because he thought he'd try and put the frighteners on him, but this rider just kicked again. And as soon as Barty looked back to see if anybody was following, because he wanted the wheel there, and the answer is there was nobody following. And the Belgians cheering this man of the Ardennes to a clear lead at the top of the Côte de la Redoute.
It's amazing to see that this young man at 24 years of age has already finished second in the Tour of Flanders this year. The first real attempt he's making on the World Cup, and now he's making the motions of the big attacks in Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Well, that really was one of the coolest attacks by this rider. What strength now. But I can't believe he's going to hold them off, because they've reorganised that chase just behind as he now races towards the next climb of the day, which will be the Côte de Sprimont. A 1.6 kilometre climb. Now switches the gears a little bit. The yellow flag, remember, is a warning flag in Europe. It's yellow for danger. He rejoins the main road. A tight turn, little bit of continued downhill here, and a little bit of strengthening of the opposition as more riders start to come up into the attack. And it looks as though Oscar Camazin has also got himself now into this chase group. This is developing into quite a pursuit.
Pretty impressive move by Frank van den Broek, Phil. Over 30 kilometers still to go to the finish, and I wonder if he's thinking about the mistake in his mind now of Laurent Jalabert, who attacked with over 80 kilometers left to go to the finish in Anse, just outside Liège, and now he is building up an advantage which is hovering around about 20 seconds over a group of riders which is starting to reform behind, including the world champion Camazin, including Michele Bartoli, and his gap now 12 seconds.
Well, it's not very far, is it? And he might, you know, get brought back on the next little climb. We've got this descent here first. Here's the action behind now. Remember, it was the MAPE team that ripped the race up towards the Côte de la Redoute, and it was the Cofidis man who used their tactics against them.
Well, this group certainly has swelled. It was three riders over the top of the climb, but now we've got one or two more men coming up there. There is Oscar Camazin, the current world champion. On the front there, Paolo Bettini is the rider from the MAPE squad.
And Frank van den Broek won't know it, but of course Bettini is really the workhorse now. They rested him early on to wait until Bartoli made his move on the La Redoute. That has now happened, and it's now Bettini who is having to give all of his energy now to try and pull his team captain back up to the race leader. Now, I think he might well be starting the climb of the Sprimont here.
This is the early slopes of the Côte de Sprimont. Not a very difficult climb, actually. The riders came over this morning on their way down to Bastogne, and if Van den Broek would just turn round a little, he'd be able to see the riders behind him. Big reaction coming from Michael Bogard, trying to leap across at the top of the Côte de Sprimont. 30 kilometers to go to the finish.
And the main field behind, not looking too frisky at the moment, but Bogard is being brought back to heel here. The climb, as Paul said, isn't really steep, but it bites a little bit.
Well, there is Frank van den Broek. It's 1 kilometer long, 9% at the steepest part, and as you can see, it only goes up 65 meters. Now, if Van den Broek is an excellent tactician, he will look back and see the group behind him. He will sit up and wait, and if he has got good form, because that was a pretty impressive attack, he'll wait to one of the climbs towards the finish.
Well, it's 9%, just the best part of 1 in 12, 1 in 11. And Cofidis here will be cheering all the way now, because this rider, he's put in this strong attack, but he really might be advised to just hang on a few minutes and do it again later. And he's looking over to assess whether that might be the better part of the trip.
Fantastic to see this young man reaching the maturity of becoming one of the great classic riders, second in the Tour of Flanders. He rode a very good Paris-Roubaix, and now he's got the sense to look over his shoulder, see who's in that group behind, which is now being led by Nicky Abersold. And there are in fact 3 riders from Rabobank in this group, so they're going to be in a pretty good position to rival Mappé over the final few kilometres. And Van den Broek himself just has one teammate in there, and that's Peter Farazijn.
He's backpedaling at the moment on the climb, Paul. He's waiting for him to rejoin him. He's not tried to hold him off. That's a very mature decision, I think. And it's Nicky Abersold. Here he comes, the Swiss champion for Rabobank, who's bringing the race back together again now. We're told there are 18 riders in this group, an awful big group of riders, Paul, at this stage of the Liège.
And race radio telling us that the leader of the World Cup, André Schmeel, is around about 1 minute behind this group, and nobody knows exactly where Laurent Jalabert is out on the course. Van den Broek slipping back down the group there, just checking on who is in it. And at the front, I can tell him Michele Bartoli is looking pretty good. Udo Boltz is there in the pink and white jersey of Team Telecom. That is Mario Arts, the Lotto rider, in there. Paolo Bettini coming through. Peter Farazijn. Problem there for David Rebellin, but I would say Frank Van den Broek is going to be very happy to have in this group Peter Farazijn.
You can bet your life. In fact, Rebellin gone back very quickly there. I wonder if he had more than just the requirement for a drink. He might have had a flat tyre. But we're looking here now at number 52, and this is Mario Ertz. Pretty good Belgian rider.
Mario Ertz had a very good ride in the Flèche Wallonne just a couple of days ago under unbelievably atrocious conditions, and I have to say he's waving the flag for Team Lotto this afternoon, because André Schmeel is a long way back. These are the riders in the race just now.
And Figueras has done well to be in this group after the bike change he took earlier on. And there's a list of good names here. Ertz is the guy at the bottom of that list. A lot of riders now will take confidence because they brought Van den Broek back into the group, and Sproek is here. What a great season Sproek is having, without any real results really, apart from of course his great finish in the Milan San Remo back in early March.
And it's nice to see in there, riding for Mercatone Uno, the man with the best name in bicycle racing, I reckon, Marco Velo.
Yeah, almost as if you could not choose any other sport when you've got a name like Velo. Axel Merckx still just hanging off the back. Now, is he getting a bit tired, I wonder?
He's done an awful lot of work to try and get his teammate Michele Bartoli into an ideal position. He's with one of the second groups out on the road, the group with André Schmeel there, wearing number 51 in the white jersey for the first time of the champion of the leader of the World Cup. He wore it after Milan San Remo, lost it, and then managed to get it back again last week in Paris-Roubaix.
Well, now he's in danger of losing it again here with Jean-Luc Van den Broek right up in that lead group, as they try to pull themselves back into action. But though, judging by the way they're riding and looking at some of the faces on these poor chaps at the back of the race, they are really suffering now. And now, is this another attack off the front?
That looks like Figueras has come out to the front there, obviously trying to soften it up for something for Michele Bartoli to take over afterwards. Now, this young man was the under-23 champion of the world a few years ago, but there's a big reaction coming straight back. The reaction coming from the Rabobank team there, the champion of Switzerland, Abersold. You've got to get up early in the morning to catch that young man out. And it's going to be a big rivalry now, Phil, a big fight, I reckon, between the Mappé squad and the Rabobank squad.
Well, our next big climb, they're not really big, but they're certainly there, is the Côte du Sart-Tillemont. There's the world champion, pulling himself back into some form. Number one, the winner for the past 2 years, in fact, Bartoli. And must have been very shocked there by the arrival on his right shoulder of Van den Broek on the climb of La Redoute.
Michele Bartoli certainly thinking about last year. It was on the Côte de Sart-Tillemont that he actually launched his attack. Nobody was expecting the attack to come. They were all waiting in the back of their minds for the big attack to come on the Côte de Saint-Nicolas. And just before the summit, with about 1 kilometre to go, he took off, and that was it. They never saw him again. And he's probably expecting to launch his big attack there, because that, although not a steep climb, is pretty difficult towards the summit.
And the Côte d'Ans at the end. It's not a steep climb either, but when your legs are aching like they will be by that stage, it could be very decisive. And Andre Schmil at 1 minute and 5 seconds back in that chase group, so he's not completely out of it yet. It just depends how many attacks we get from this front group now.
A lot of big riders in this front group. The picture breakup, unfortunately, because of the adverse weather conditions. Moving up along the outside, 21, Laurent Roux.
And this front group, sorry, Paul.
At the front, you can see there is a big desire by both Mapei and Rabobank to keep the pace up high. 26 kilometers left to go to the finish.
That's about 16 miles of racing now. 2 echelons forming there as Camazin sits at the back of the group. Paolo Bettini here now at the front, and the Rabobank rider just up behind him there, Marcus Zerberg. Number 71 is Rebellin.
Nicky Abersol, champion of Switzerland, moving up there. Michele Bartoli, very comfortable in this group. 63 is Peter Farazijn, and in fact, after that very savage attack by Frank van den Broeke, he seems to have disappeared to the back of this group.
Yes, there he is there. And he has gone right onto the tail behind the champion of Holland. Interesting. Maybe he's waiting now to see what else he can develop here. Mario Ertz is the Lotto rider. Again, putting up another one. There's an attack on off the front, and this must be Zerberg.
The Rabobank riders obviously trying to toughen it up. They've got Martin Den Bakker in this group, and they've also got Michael Bogard as well. Bogard, a very good rider. He will be looking to try and launch an attack later on, but this may well be a great victory for the current world champion, because there Oscar Camenzin is looking in very good form today. He's brought himself up to real good form for this time of the season.
Well, good for him, because the Lamprey team need a good result, I think. They've been doing a lot of contributing to the racing all the season without getting anything really, really big.
Marcus Zerberg, I'm quite surprised to see him riding so well in a race like Liège-Bastogne-Liège, because I regard him much more as a sprinter, but certainly he's come on in leaps and bounds since he switched across this winter from the Post Swiss team to join here Rabobank. And as always, the best man in these one-day classics for the Team Telecom is Udo Boltz.
He's also a good stage race rider. There was talk even last year of him being the team leader on Telecom in the event that Ulrich never refound his form. That wasn't to be the case. Ulrich did re-find his form, but Udo Boltz had a 9th place finish in the Tour de France, and he's right on the front now. The pace has been lifted again. That's not going to help, in fact, Andre Schmil's little bunch, which looked at one stage to be returning here. About 7 riders there are left now in the group, so that little attack by Zerberg has split the field.
There's the rest of the group. Van den Broeke is going to be in that group behind, and he won't be too happy about that. That's the danger of sitting at the back of a group like this, trying to rest and recuperate to see how the race develops, because if it does split, you do end up getting caught in the wrong end of a split, and I think that's Van den Broeke in 3rd position there in the chasing group.
So Van den Broeke is watching everything. Has he recovered from that magnificent attack? We're not going to know for a while, I don't think. Udo Boltz here is again stretching the rivals, keeping a look on them, but deciding it's not worth it.
He jumped away there, and you see how he looked underneath his armpit there to see if he could see the shadows of the riders coming up behind, and in fact the shadows were there, and it was Nicky Abersol. And in fact this is Peter Farazijn, so Van den Broeke has missed out on the split here, and there is Paolo Bettini, and race radio telling us in fact Michele Bartoli has missed out on the split too.
Laurent Roux is the rider here. First time I've noticed him. He must have come up from that forward group on the climb of La Redoute. Well, this is interesting. Abersol is here, and that is Farazijn at the back. He's 83. We're looking to see if 81 comes in the frame. Not a lot of people. Farazijn's not going to help here, having left Van den Broeke in that second group behind.
Farazijn will be very happy just to sit on the back of the group here. Now very shortly we'll take a left-hand turn off this road here and descend down into the valley, and that is when they will approach the start of the Côte de Sartillemont. Now that is a very interesting situation, because Van den Broeke now is trying to ride across the gap. Big panic.
Huh. And Van den Broeke is bridging on a huge gear as well right now as he tries to bridge the gap. One Rabobank coming along for the ride. Is it Den Bakker?
Looks very much like Den Bakker. You can see the red and white and blue stripe on his shoulder there, showing that he's a former champion of Holland. And Van den Broeke is riding across the gap here. The fact is he's actually trying to ride across to Mario Aerts, because Mario Aerts was the man who first leapt across the gap. And there is the front group there, so it looks very much as if it will all come back together. But I would say a moment of panic there for the young Frank Van den Broeke and Michele Bartoli.
Rebellin sitting on the wheel of Bartoli has that lovely position. He's cruising across now, but he's not firing like we expected, is he?
He's not the super Michele Bartoli of the last 2 years, although he rode across that gap quite easily. He is making mistakes. He is getting caught in the second part of these splits, and at the end of the day, it's those efforts that count. It's those efforts that when it comes to the final attacks on the final climbs that you cannot afford to make all the time.
Another one gone, and this is another attack now. They're launching them thick and fast to try and break this race up.
Now that's interesting. Oscar Kaminzinder's got away there. Again, it looks like Marcus Seberg joining onto the back there. Paolo Bettini. This may well be a bit of a surprise for Team Mapei, because Bettini seems to be riding a lot better today than, in fact, his team leader, Michele Bartoli. Kaminzin now seeing the urgency of the advantage they've got over the split in that group, is going straight to the front to put the pressure on. These riders will know that they've got the left-hand turn and the descent. Marco Velo is coming across here as well.
Well, we talk of Bettini being the great helper, you know, for Bartoli, but it's not just that. He's such a strong rider. Who knows, if he gets himself in the right move here, he could well be the winner of this race. Had a stage win this year in Tirreno Adriatico. That was in March. This is proving very, very hard these last few kilometres now. Weather conditions perfect, roads are dry. Not organised yet, are they?
It's as if everybody wants to try and ride away to the finish alone, and nobody wants to work and control the tempo being set at the front. Seberg now sitting up in first position. Bettini reacting immediately to come onto his wheel. Kaminzin happy to be in third place, and Peter Farazijn just keeping an eye on affairs and just waiting to make sure that his team leader from the Cofidis squad from France, Frank Vandenbroek, comes up from behind. But another attack by Marco Velo. He's going for it.
Velo launches again, just as Farazijn told him, I'm not going to work. And Velo has gone, and it's opened up little gaps between, but they're all struggling their way back. It's a very tough race this now to read properly. There's the echelon from behind. Now the riders are countering the move here, and is this is Michael Bogart, the champion of the Netherlands, now deciding it is the time to join the leaders.
Well, he saw that group. He saw it was starting to get dangerous. People putting pressure on at the front there. He decided that now's the time to leap across the gap. The champion of Holland's had a great season so far with an overall victory in Paris-Nice, supported by a very strong Rabobank team, but the reaction coming from Frank Vandenbroek in person. He comes across there with Laurent Roux. There are now 8 riders at the front of this race, and there's a chase of around about 8 riders caught behind, including Michele Bartoli, Phil, who once again has missed out on the split.
He's just arrived. He's just arrived, an express train. He's just latched onto the back here. Somebody shot off the front at the same time, but has sat up, and the long line has finally regrouped. But there'll be a few deep breaths now, because these boys are going to feel a little bit tired after that flurry of attacks.
A chance now to recuperate somewhat before the start of the climb de Salle-Tillemont. They're at Tilf, 19 kilometres to go. They drop down here for about 1.5 kilometres into the valley below, and that is where they will then start the Côte de Salle-Tillemont. And another few riders led by Udo Bolt getting onto the front group again.
So we're more or less back to the status quo, I think, as we head to the next climb on good roads. Our motorcyclist there almost got through, didn't he? And then the riders took him out. Try again, sir.
Well, in fact, it looked as if Udo Bolt got onto the tail of that group there, but in fact, the fact that they're going downhill here, 1 or 2 riders have lost the line in the corner. There is Bolt's moving up into last position, but 1 or 2 riders have been caught out and left behind as they go over the motorway. They'll drop down now into the valley, and there's a general regrouping.
Yes, that group is back together again. They all live to fight another day. It'll be interesting to see now if just how many riders have plans to launch an attack on the climb of the Salle-Tillemont. Well, I don't think it'll just be Bartoli, and I'm not sure whether Bartoli has it left now, because he's coming up to the groups on the splits, and not with the leaders, but he's correcting himself, and that's not a good sign.
You have to be super strong and super confident to be able to tack on the Côte de Salle-Tillemont. I would say the best thing to do is to wait for the final climb of the day, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, because I don't really regard the climb up to Anse as being a major difficulty, although they have done over 265 kilometres by the time they get there. The Côte de Saint-Nicolas is a really difficult climb, and that is where, if you attack strongly at the bottom by the summit, you can open up an advantage of about 30 seconds.
We're 19 kilometres from the finish now. When we get to the climb, there'll be 17 kilometres from the finish. Something like 16 riders in this group as they're settling down yet again to think of the next plan. They're all rather tenacious today, and it's unusual to see such a good selection of men in at this stage of the LBL.
A big long line. Again, it's the white jerseys on the front. That is Team Mapei. They still have great beliefs in Michele Bartoli, who I don't think today is in super condition. He will, though, ride with the courage and determination of a man who's going to look for a third victory here in Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
So it's a gentle free wheel now, down to the start of climb, what will be, in fact, climb number 9. We're always saying there's 10 climbs on the course, but we mustn't forget that it's also a little climb up to the finish line.
A lot of the climbs on the day here don't even register on the organisers' list of the climbs, but in this area of Belgium there's hardly any flat at all on the course Liège-Bastogne-Liège as they drop down now, not very far away from the start of that final, well, the penultimate climb, I should say, the one where last year Michele Bartoli launched his incredible attack. But everybody will remember that, and they'll be waiting for the attack to come from Bartoli, and certainly if he does attack today, it won't be a surprise.
Almost expected, I think. But these riders know now that Bartoli is not the top form that they thought he might have, because otherwise he wouldn't have been caught on the climb of La Redoute.
Marco Velo sitting on the back of the group as they go over the river, and very shortly they've got a right-hand turn and then a left, and then the climb begins.
So we're a little bit out of town at the moment from Liège, not that far actually. This sort of road follows the river through. The riders often using this stretch of road for the previous warm-up training rides as they come down into the area for a week for the Ardennes Classics, the Côte de Sartillemont.
It's 9% at the steepest part, but it's only an average of 5%, and it's around about 3 kilometers long, and it's still on the front, the white jerseys of Team Mapei. And being on his own, Udo Bolt in the pink and white jersey of Telecom there has decided to take a break and sit near the back.
I don't blame him. Let's see if somebody takes a break off the front now. The pace is still very, very high indeed. It's quite an interesting climb this now, because we'll see if anybody does yo-yo, or are all these guys as strong as one another today.
It's still a very big group at the back of the group as well. A bit of a chat going on here between Frank van den Broeke and Peter Farazijn, talking together about the tactics they want to adopt. Peter Farazijn is proving to be a very good man to ride alongside Frank van den Broeke. He's always there towards the end of these classics, and now Bettini is having to sacrifice himself, Phil, which I feel is a bit of a shame, because he has been riding well, probably just as strong as Michele Bartoli, but now he's slipping into the role of domestique.
And Mario Hertz on his wheel, and just behind, third in line, is Rebellin. Continue to climb. And Paul, nobody attacking. It's almost as if now they've got the measure of each other.
Well, it's been a very long, difficult ride since the top of the Côte de la Redoute, and Paolo Bettini now is doing exactly as he did last year, setting the pace, keeping the pressure on, and that is preventing a lot of riders feeling that they've got the strength to attack. David Rebellin too, sitting in third position. Zevgeny Spruk in fourth place in the Lampre team. There is Figueras, but there's a big queue up behind there of the orange and white jerseys of the Rabobank team.
David Rebellin, former leader of the Giro d'Italia, and the world champion now deciding he's going to watch from the back here. Looks quite cool. He's went over to the Tour Down Under in Australia this year with his Lampre team to start finding his form. It wasn't a race he did much in, but he certainly now seems to be finding his form. Well, it says Laurie House is here, number 22. I haven't caught sight of him in this breakaway, but the other riders we've certainly seen.
Well, I hadn't spotted him either, but this group is really riding very well together. But I'm sure, Phil, that if nobody attacks on this climb, it will absolutely explode when they come to the final climb of the day, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, because it's a difficult climb, and really you've got to suffer just to get your body up that climb at the end of 260 kilometers. Still, Bettini's putting all the pressure on the front, not even thinking about the possibility that he could bring another Italian victory here. He wants just one man to win, and that's Michele Bartoli.